Hello, I'm TJ Halliday, Coordinator of Officials for the State of Maine. On behalf of the Maine Principals Association, the Maine Basketball Commission, and the Maine Basketball Council, I welcome you to the Coaches Rules Video Clinic for the 2019-2020 season. In today's program, we'll be covering the National Federation of High School rule changes, as well as the points of emphasis, special play situations, and lastly, discussing the IBO-approved coach official communication guidelines that will be in effect in the state of Maine this season. The Rules Committee has announced 5 rules changes, the first of which deals with jersey numbers. The uniform as depicted is red. The corresponding number is also red. This number design is difficult to see, and beginning in the 2024-25 season, this style will no longer be legal. For those schools considering buying uniforms, they will need to use solid contrasting numbers on the torso of the jersey to indicate those numbers. As you can see by the picture on the left, a corresponding shadow trim line will be legal. Either one of these styles will be considered legal beginning in the 2024-25 season. The next rules change deals with headbands. To be consistent with volleyball, this season the Rules Committee expanded the width of that headband to 3 inches. The next rules change makes mouth guards legal equipment, as long as they meet the provisions regarding their components and are properly fitted. State associations may also deem them required equipment. It should be noted, no such designation has been made in the state of Maine. In the state of Maine, the mouth guard will not be required equipment. The next rules change deals with coaches entering the playing floor. The head coach and any number of assistant coaches may enter the court in any situation where a fight may break out, or has broken out, to prevent the situation from escalating. Head coaches are encouraged to have a plan of action for which assistant coaches should enter the playing court and which ones should remain in the bench area to defuse the situation. The next rules change deals with a waistband. In recent years, the rolled or folded shorts has become a hot topic across the country. This year, the National Federation Rules Committee has decided to address. Beginning this season, there will be no restrictions on the rolling shorts at the natural waistband seam, as long as multiple manufacturers' logos are not visible, the drawstring does not present a safety hazard, and the anatomy is sufficiently covered. I'm happy to announce, in the state of Maine, the multiple manufacturer's logo requirement will not be enforced. The shorts as you see depicted on the left will be considered legal apparel in the state of Maine, and officials will not address with players and/or coaches. It should be noted that the exposed drawstring is a safety issue and should be addressed. As you can see by this picture, the player number 4 in blue is attempting a try and is negatively impacted by an exposed drawstring. In this video, watch number 25 in white receive a pass. As she attempts to try to make a move toward the goal, her hand gets caught in an exposed drawstring and loses possession of the ball. In situations such as this, officials will be encouraged to award the ball back to the offended team if an exposed drawstring presents a possession consequence. It should be understood that an exposed drawstring will be considered a uniform violation. When the ball becomes dead, officials will give the player a few seconds to address the situation. If during that dead ball period, the player does not address the issue, it is considered a uniform violation, and the player will be directed to the bench. The officials should request a substitute from the head coach. They will address you directly and ask you politely for a substitute for the offending player. Points of emphasis. Hair control devices and headbands will be points of emphasis this season for game officials. Headbands go around the entire head and have color restrictions. These restrictions are white, black, beige, and the predominant color of the jersey. As you can see by the picture on the left, the uniform is white, but the headband appears to be blue. This would be considered illegal apparel under the current rules. Hair control devices only go around hair and do not have color restrictions. As the picture on right depicts, the hair control device is red and would be considered legal equipment. Silicone and metal bracelets. These bracelets may be worn so long as the bracelet is taped down to the wrist with the medical information showing. These devices don't appear very often, but when they do, game officials will be diligent to ensure they're taped down properly for the safety of all players involved. Throw-in violations. There are 4 throw-in violations officials will be looking for this season: leaving the designated spot prior to releasing the ball, failing to pass the ball directly onto the court, passing the ball so it goes directly out of bounds prior to touching another player, and failure to release the ball on a pass directly onto the court before the 5 seconds have elapsed. These are all throw-in violations and will be a point of emphasis with game officials this season. Lastly, it is a necessity to have an administrative representative meet with game officials prior to each contest. This meeting will allow for communication on the expectations for each group. The contest officials are there to manage the contest, which includes the players and coaches. It is the expectation that the school administrators will manage the student body, the parents, and all other spectators. School administrators must create and follow security procedures and support efforts to have the offending spectators removed from the premises. Proactive policies lead to fewer problems. It is the game administrator's ultimate responsibility to provide a safe environment for coaches, players, and officials. Game administrators should not wait for the game official to point out a problem. Should a fan need to be removed during the contest, game officials should notify school administrators and allow school administrators to handle the problem. It should be noted, if game administrators are not present, officials' next recourse is the home team's head coach. In that case, the home team head coach would have to address the fan and have the fan removed from the gymnasium. Play situations. The first play situation that we need to discuss is contact above the shoulders. In years past, a moving elbow that contacted an opponent above the shoulders was automatically ruled an intentional foul. This season, that interpretation will change. Contact with a stationary elbow may be incidental or a common foul. A stationary elbow is defined as an elbow that is not moving faster than the rest of the player's torso. For example, if A1 while holding the ball pivots and his or her elbow contacts B1, the official ruling could be incidental contact or a player control foul. A moving elbow that is excessive can be either an intentional foul or a flagrant personal foul. If the player swings the elbow excessively, faster than the rest of the player's torso, and contacts an opponent, it is at minimum an intentional foul. If the contact is severe or the player measures up the opponent, it is flagrant and the player will be ejected. Contact with the moving elbow above the shoulders that could be ruled incidental or a common foul is as follows. For example, shooters following through on a try, hitting an opponent above the shoulders, diving for a loose ball, jumping or returning to the floor during rebound activity, or during screening activity. In years past, a moving elbow during these activities, hitting an opponent above the shoulders would be considered an intentional foul. This year, officials have the discretion to determine if this play should be ruled incidental or a common foul. Grasping the ring. A player must not grasp either basket at any time during the game except to prevent injury. Assuming the player is not attempting to avoid injury, a player may not grasp the ring and break the ring loose from the flange, hang, pull themselves up, or gain an advantage in playing offense or defense. If any of these items occur, a player technical foul will be assessed. I am happy to announce that in the state of Maine this year will be an exception to the rule. A player may grasp the ring to dunk the ball into the basket if it is done so without collapsing the ring. As you can see by the picture on the right, the player clearly grasps the ring as he dunks the basketball into the basket. In the state of Maine this year, this will be a legal play. A player will also be allowed to collapse the ring if it is done so without grasping. If the force of the dunk causes the ring to collapse, this will be a legal play in Maine. And as always, a player may hang and or collapse the ring if it is done so to avoid injury to him or her and their opponents. It should also be noted that officials will not tolerate post-dunk taunting and baiting. Shooter-initiated contact. In this play, white number 1 gets the ball in the low post, commits contact on the torso of the defender, creates space, and tries for goal. This is a growing problem in our game. This year, officials will be asked to be more diligent in enforcing shooter-initiated contact. If the shooter is creating space to try for goal, a penalty should be assessed to the shooter. On the next play, number 14 in black jumps into the defender, knocking her to the floor, and the foul is charged to the defender. This is also a growing problem in our game. Officials are asked to be more cognizant of who's causing the contact and where the contact is occurring. In this play, the offensive player clearly contacts the defender in the torso, creates space to try for goal. This is a player control foul and should have been ruled as such. Defender under the basket. In National Federation of High School rules, it is perfectly legal for a defensive player to obtain legal guarding position directly under the basket. At our level of play, there is no arc and there is no restriction on secondary defenders gaining position under the basket. In this play, it should be determined if that guarding position was obtained before the airborne shooter elevated to try for goal. If that position was obtained, a player control foul should be ruled. If the guarding position was not obtained, then a blocking foul should be ruled. On this play, the contact was ruled incidental and no whistle was blown. That is unacceptable. Game officials should determine the legality of the defender and make the ruling as such, even though the defender was under the basket. The Euro step. On this play, Brown number 3 ends a dribble while airborne, steps with the right foot, then back with the left foot before elevating to try for goal. This is a legal play. It should be noted that this play can also be done illegally. Had this player actually ended the dribble with one foot on the floor, then step with the right foot, and place the pivot foot back to the floor before elevating to try, this would be an illegal play and ruled a traveling violation. But since she ended the dribble while airborne, she has the freedom to step with one foot, then back with the other, before elevating to try for goal. The pro hop. This is a play that's becoming more popular with players in our game today. You'll notice the player ends a dribble on 2 feet, jumps to 2 feet, before elevating to try for goal. This is an illegal move and should be ruled as such by game officials. If coaches wish to have a move like this in their repertoire, they should train their players to end the dribble on 1 foot, then jump to 2 feet, before elevating to try for goal. This is called a jump stop and is a legal play. The spin move. It's a very exciting and athletic play, but is it legal? Let's break down the footwork on this play. The player in blue ends a dribble on the right foot. He steps with the left foot, establishing the right foot as a pivot foot, then places the pivot foot back to the floor before elevating to try. This is a traveling violation and should be ruled as such by game officials. It should be noted that this move can be executed in a legal manner. In this play, black number 4 ends the dribble with the left foot touching the floor, steps with the right foot, and then lifts the pivot foot to try for goal. This is a legal play. The up and under move. On this play, black number 3 establishes the left foot as a pivot foot, steps with the right foot, then lifts the pivot foot to try for goal. This is a legal play, incorrectly ruled a traveling violation. Game officials need to be diligent at identifying the pivot foot and understanding that the pivot foot may be lifted to try for goal. Do you see a travel on this play? You make the ruling. If you said there's a travel on this play, congratulations, you are correct. White 21 lifts the pivot foot before releasing the ball at the start of a dribble. This is an incredibly difficult play to adjudicate in real speed. Game officials all across Maine will be challenged this season not to guess at the start of a dribble. If the player clearly lifts the pivot foot before releasing a dribble, a traveling violation should be assessed. However, if it's not clear, game officials are challenged not to blow the whistle and not to rule traveling and allow a play to continue. Far too often, legal plays are being ruled illegal at the start of the dribble. This season, it will be a point of emphasis with officials to be sure a traveling violation has occurred before blowing the whistle and awarding the ball to the opposing team. Coach-official communication. This season in the state of Maine, officials will be encouraged to talk to coaches when clarifications are necessary. It is understood that being able to effectively communicate with coaches is critical to an official's success. Officials are being asked to acknowledge coaches when legitimate issues are raised. We must understand this acknowledgement may be verbal or nonverbal, as officials are asked not to take the whistle out of their mouth during a live ball with the clock running. Verbal communication should be done during dead ball periods with the clock stopped and should never delay the resumption of play unless there's an unusual situation that needs to be addressed by game officials. We're asking our officials to be good listeners, understanding the issue before formulating a response. We want our officials to be approachable. Appearing arrogant or aloof or defensive only creates barriers to effective communication. Spatial awareness. Our officials are being asked to be very cognizant of how they approach coaches during the course of a game. They should not be defensive or combative and should take a stance that allows open and effective communication. Coaches should be aware that the expectation that these conversations take place while the coach is in the coaching box. If the coach is outside the coaching box, officials may have no choice but to issue a warning for a coaching box infraction. Officials are being asked to answer legitimate questions and not statements. If a legitimate question is asked in a respectful manner, coaches deserve a respectful response. Officials are being asked to understand the difference between legitimate questions and statements and/or rhetorical questions. It is a no-win situation to attempt a rhetorical question or statement, and officials will ignore those types of statements. Officials should be honest in their responses to coaches. If they miss the play, they should admit it. There are 3 things every official should be able to say to a coach. Coach, I missed it. Coach, you might be right on that one. Or lastly, Coach, I think I got that play right. We are asking our officials to choose their words wisely, never use personal derogatory comments, and keep their tone unemotional. These conversations should be brief. They should give short, precise, rules-based answers and not give a dissertation. These conversations should be for rules clarification and help the coach understand why a ruling was made. Lastly, officials need to know when the conversation is over. When coaches start to repeat themselves and they don't have anything more to add, professionally end the conversation and move on. Remember, these conversations should be for rules clarifications only. If these conversations devolve into who's right and who's wrong, there's no longer a benefit to that conversation. We need to keep the game moving and get the ball back in play as efficiently as possible. Finally, special thanks to the members of the Maine Basketball Commission, Mike Burnham of the Maine Principals Association Interscholastic Committee, Peter Murray of Dexter Regional High School and Tyler Tracy of Poland Regional High School, and the 5 Maine board interpreters for their contributions to today's program. If these organizations continue to work together, we can create an outstanding environment for student athletes to participate in the rich history of Maine basketball. If you have questions or concerns during the season, feel free to contact me. My email address and phone number are listed. I wish all of you the best of luck this season.